So once again, JK Rowling is in hot water with the trans lobby, or rather, a segment of the trans lobby, because it's very important to understand that when people claim that they represent an entire group, that isn't always the case. There are trans activists who have actually defended JK Rowling statements, and they have denounced the more militant, aggressive side of the trans lobby. For basically being hysterical. So the latest controversy regarding J.K. Rowling, a woman who needs no introduction, she's one of the most famous writers in the world, one of the richest women in the world, um, comes from a light mocking that she made of I don't know if it was a tweet or if you just bear with me. Yeah, so basically, she wrote on the 6th of June that she was puzzled by a headline on an article about creating a more equal world that referred to people who menstruate, right? And this is how she responded. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people, she wrote. Someone help me out. Wumben? Wimpund? Wumud? When others replied that she was being transphobic, she argued that biological sex was meaningful to her and other women, despite claims by some trans commentators that it is unimportant. Let me just say for the record, I'm 100% on the side of JK Rowling with this. Um, and to me, the outrage is an example of the sort of bullying narrative that the trans lobby likes to put out there, that you either agree with them 100% or you will be denounced as a horrible transphobic bigot. I'm just going to read out what the take the London Times has taken on this, because it's pretty much the way I would put it. Um, Pretty much aligning with my thoughts on this. Rowling is right. Those who are offended by free speech have no grounds for apology or sympathy, and this references the fact that Daniel Radcliffe has weighed into it. J.K. Rowling has enriched the lives of hundreds of millions of readers with her fantasy novels of Harry Potter. The sole reason her literary success does not make her a billionaire is that she donates a large proportion of her fortune to charity. Yet even if she were a less generous person and lacked talent as a writer, she would be justified in conscientiously stating opinions on issues of public interest without being deterred of fear of causing offence. Rowling posted on social media at the weekend a gently mocking comment about an article that referred to people who menstruate rather than to women. She was swiftly condemned by transgender activists for her supposedly transphobic remark. The criticism was joined by the actor Daniel Radcliffe, who as a child starred as Harry Potter in the films based on Rowling's books. And, it's worth pointing out Rowling was an executive producer in the Harry Potter films, so it wasn't like a distant connection. She met with Daniel Radcliffe numerous times. I understand they know each other fairly well. Radcliffe said to all the people who now feel that their experience of the books has been tarnished or diminished, I'm deeply sorry for the pain these comments have caused you. Well, that's a pretty ridiculous thing for Radcliffe to come out with. He can't apologise for someone else. Though ostensibly emollient, Radcliffe voiced a pernicious principle verging on emotional blackmail. Free speech challenges people's deeply held convictions. That is the point of it and how knowledge advances. There would be no purpose in expressing an opinion if it merely confirmed widespread convictions and social mores. Rowling's insistence that sex differences are real rather than mutable was acutely perceived and wittily expressed, but even if she had been wrong, Radcliffe would have no grounds for seeking to assuage the pain of her critics. Once a society allows that people who feel emotional anguish are entitled to apology and moral restitution, there is no limit to the abridgment of free speech. Um, it will allow in the name of compassion. Radcliffe should think again. His comments are, to coin a phrase, offensive and hurtful to those who cherish liberty. I absolutely agree with that, because if we have this situation where people can claim to be offended by comments that a public figure makes that they take really to heart, because it's, delving into a very something that is very personal to them. Um, where do you draw a limit with that? Because who gets to set the guidelines? Who gets to sort of say, well, okay, you're too sensitive, or actually you have a point with that? Um, if you're a public figure and you express an opinion on just about any topical issue, it's going to offend someone. Um, and I just don't buy this thing about, well, she's destroying the childhood experience of many of her fans. Um, I haven't read the novels, but I'm fairly familiar with the Harry Potter stories, and as far as I know, she's never ever put on a pretense about, for example, suggesting that biology doesn't matter. That's always been her position. I don't think she's suddenly, I don't think the charge that she's suddenly let people down should really stick. JK Rowling isn't inciting hatred against trans people. She's not being cruel. She's not being engaging in sort of bullying tweets. She is simply standing up for her conviction that biology does matter. And by the way, she's not alone. I often take umbrage with the position of third wave feminists, but I do support those feminists who insist that biology matters. I do not accept that someone born with a penis will ever be a biological woman. I just don't. So I'm a transphobe. Under that logic that if you think that biology matters, I'm a transphobe, and I can't change that to me. I don't care if I'm perceived as a transphobe, um, because unfortunately that's the situation that we're in. By just stating the honest fact that biology does actually matter, then you're a transphobe. Now, the interesting thing here is, like I said, there are transgender people who have actually supported J.K. Rowling in this, and they've denounced the trans lobby for their hysterical overreaction. Um, I mean, if you're so lacking of confidence that you need to try and silence a public figure because you disagree with their interpretation of biology, the thing here is, my position is not that transgender people can't criticize her. It's these malicious attempts to try and silence her. This isn't J.K. Rowling bullying the trans community. This is the trans community bullying J.K. Rowling. You know, they're trying to shame her, they're trying to vilify her as some sort of hateful bigot. I really don't believe that she is. Um, and I actually respect J.K. Rowling for not towing the line and for sticking to her guns on this. There's been other people who have kind of fallen foul of the transgender thought police, and they have kind of grovelled out with apologies. She hasn't, and I respect her for that. She has. I'm just trying to get some articles in front of me here. She hasn't shied away from her opinion on other important issues. She was skeptical of Jeremy Corbyn as Labour leader, and she mocked him as Saint Jeremy. She was outspoken on Brexit. Um, and she was in favour of the United Kingdom staying together, as were many public figures in the Scottish referendum issue. Of course, she wrote much of Harry Potter in Edinburgh. And cultural appropriation, I didn't know this one. Apparently, she attracted criticism from a Native American campaigner who claimed that she was culturally appropriating by having an opinion on skinwalkers, which is an aspect of Native American culture. Let me just say, I think the issue of cultural appropriation is nonsense. I have no respect for the sort of narrative that goes with that, um, which basically is leveled at white people. Like, if you're a white person and you show an interest in other cultures, then you're culturally appropriating, and if you don't, then you're a white supremacist who thinks your culture's superior. You can't win. But with this issue on the transgender lobby and J.K. Rowling, if they are so confident that they're women, then why are they so bothered about about J.K. Rowling's position on this? Okay, I get it. Or I can appreciate if you have someone who was a big Harry Potter fan, they grew up with her novels, and they're a transgender person, I can understand they would be disappointed by this. If you look up to someone and they take a position that is radically different from your own, but that still gives them no right to be demanding apologies or to be smearing her as a transphobe. If she was, say, coming out with nasty tweets or cruel comments that really were spiteful, or encouraging discrimination or violence against trans people, that would be a different matter. But I think JK Rowling is simply saying that biological women have a right to define themselves and to say that actually biology does matter. There's a lot of practical reasons why it matters. We've seen how grey the debate is. Well, in my opinion, it's not grey, but we've seen how testy the debate is when it comes to competitive sports. The issue of prisons, the issue of segregated swimming pools. For example, the Lido in London, where for many, many years there have been a women's section, and that was uniquely set aside for women bathers. Um, there's a lot of areas that, you know, really, really make this not black and white. Um, as for Daniel Radcliffe, I think it's pretty preposterous for him to apologise on her behalf. He says he doesn't want to make it a personal feud against her. He acknowledges he owes much of his career to her. But, to apologise on her behalf is pretty insulting. It's almost like she can't think for herself. Mr. Radcliffe, apologise for yourself. If you think you've done something wrong, apologise. But apologising for someone else is utterly absurd. Maybe he thinks as Harry Potter, as the guy that portrayed Harry Potter, he has some sort of duty to apologise. I think apologising for other people is nonsense beyond belief. And maybe it's just a testimony to the profession that he's in. Actors, perhaps more than any other profession, seem to feel this need to virtue signal, seem to feel this need to outdo one another at just being virtuous and being woke. And, maybe it's a sincere view, but he has no right to be assuming the guilt of JK Rowling. Ultimately, the only person that should apologize is JK Rowling if she feels that she wants to apologize. I do not believe in insincere apologies. But these people who are really saying that her thoughts have destroyed her childhood, frankly, maybe you need more confidence because that says to me that you've looked up to J.K. Rowling to such an extent that you your whole life is going to be shattered because she has an opinion that you don't like. Um, and like I say, I do understand if people have looked up to her and they're transgender and they take this personally. I mean, I'm not sort of downplaying that side. Okay, that they might take her comments personally, but they need to step back just a little bit, maybe. Um, what I dislike about the trans lobby is they sort of, to me, they're not saying we want to be treated in a civil and equal way. They're saying that we need to be treated in a special way because our feelings are so, so, so fragile that if you even utter something that goes beyond our exact narrative, that anyone who calls himself a woman is a woman, then you're a horrible transphobic bigot. I mean, under that logic, it won't matter if someone's had an operation or not, because under this mentality, simply calling yourself a woman will be enough. And how can the trans lobby argue against that? Because, if someone says I'm a woman, what right would they then have to say, no, you're not, because you haven't had the operation? Because they are the people who are putting out that biology doesn't matter. This is an extremely important point, and I really don't like the sort of bullying, totalitarian tactics that the trans lobby are using. This isn't just a case of disagreeing. They're actually trying to police people's thoughts, and they're trying to push legislation on this. It's a total disgrace that women are being shamed for no other reason than saying, actually, we have unique experiences as biological women. Um, I just think it's going a bit mad, to be quite honest. Um, so I support JK Rowling 100%. And if you have looked at her opinions and you are honestly thinking that her response to that statement, people who menstruate, it's just a scientific fact that you can only menstruate if you're a biological woman. So why is her response, her light-hearted, mocking response, so awful? She didn't even say, she didn't even come out with some sort of vitriolic rant against trans people. She's just making a sarcastic response to um, a ridiculous post, a ridiculous article. Don't know precisely what article she is referring to, but I have to say I'm with JK Rowling 100%. If you're a trans woman, I've nothing against you fundamentally. I'm just saying that you cannot demand that people see things exactly the way you do. I try to treat people in a civil way. I, for example, would use the preferred pronouns because it doesn't hurt me not to. But what you cannot do, you absolutely cannot try to police people's thinking. And that's what the trans lobby is trying to do. And frankly, um, I think they're being enabled in pushing their way around by virtue signalers who think that if they don't support this sort of militant bullying thought control the trans lobby comes out with, then oh well, I better support them, otherwise I'm a transphobe. But the bit that really gets me, people can throw out, they can smear people as transphobes, but the dangerous bit is the threat of legislation. I mean, it may be in the near future, JK Rowling could find herself being subject to charges of a hate crime. That's how absurd this is. It's not inconceivable. But I respect her for standing up for her conviction, for not towing the line, and for refusing to grovel with an apology. She shouldn't have to. If you're disappointed in her, okay, you're disappointed in her, but you cannot demand that she change her thinking. And Daniel Radcliffe mentioned the issue about suicide in the trans community. Of course, that's a serious issue and it needs to be taken seriously. He quoted the Trevor Project, which their figures suggest 78% of transgender and non-binary youth had reported being the subject of discrimination because of their gender identity. Now we need to know what does that discrimination involve. But if he's trying to say, okay, well that's why J.K. Rowling should just shut up and not have her opinions, that's a bit like saying, someone cannot have an angel with a black or Asian friend because some hardcore racist has subjected someone to verbal abuse. You cannot just lump different situations together. So you cannot compare J.K. Rowling making a sarcastic response to a factually incorrect statement with transphobic bullying. Say, for example, a transgender person subjected to an actual hate crime, being physically attacked. The issue of suicide among trans youth is a very important one, but I think that this is multi-pronged. I mean, I think, for example, the whole issue of parents pandering to so-called trans children, I'm not sure that helps. I think it confuses children. Um, I mean, the fact is, people can't get an operation till I believe it's the age of 16. So the very idea of trans children is simply a misnomer anyway. It's it strikes me as very, very reckless when you get these parents, for example, that will not use a pronoun for the child because we want them to find out themselves. It's almost like midwives and doctors have some sort of conspiracy, assign this gender at birth because these pesky doctors and midwives just want to make their life hell by saying it's a boy or it's a girl. There was one case in East Anglia where a couple actually they wouldn't tell even the grandparents what gender the child was. Now, there's obvious issues with that in medical terms later on in life. If someone, hasn't been designated with a gender when they were born, what if they were develop, say, testicular cancer or ovarian cancer? Now, obviously, that would have to be diagnosed. Then the medical personnel involved in that would need to know if they're male or female. There's just obvious complications with that. So I personally think the trans lobby, quite often their behavior is ridiculous. And I'm getting a little bit tired of the sort of bullying tactics that they take because that's what it is. This is not about equality. This is about bullying people into submission. This is about demanding that everyone else think exactly the same way they do. And if you don't, you're a transphobic bigot. And by the way, they're not above bullying other transgender people who don't, you know, go into the group think that they are pushing. So I say JK Rowling has not a thing to apologise for. All she done was responded sarcastically in a light-hearted way to a factually incorrect statement because only women, only biological women can menstruate. That's just a scientific fact and it matters.